Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today I have Jennifer Draper with me. Thank you so much for being here. So let's start with where in the world are you from?
I'm originally from Edmonton, so I was born and raised there. I came to Saskatoon when I was 23. So yeah, almost 20 years now, almost a 50-50 split.
It's home.
It's home. I
Amazing.
planned on coming here for 1 year and I'm still here, so kind of
Yeah,
fell in love.
loved it. Well,
hmm
that's so great. Well, it's just such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I've heard you speak on stage. I've heard you tell your story before, and I knew as soon as it popped into my head, I was like, yeah, absolutely, I need to connect with her, because your story is so much of one to paint power. With your background here in Edmonton, what was your upbringing like? I know that this definitely circles around your childhood, so let's start there.
Yeah, oh my goodness. I guess how far back do we want to go? So I guess I was raised by my grandparents from the time I was just under 3. So I went to live with them 3 months before my third birthday. My mom was in a bit of an unhealthy lifestyle pattern, and I ended up getting put into a few dangerous situations. So my grandparents took me in for a few months, and unfortunately, my mom wasn't able to get me back. So I guess unfortunately, but fortunately, so my grandparents took legal guardianship of me, and I was with them until I was 18. So
Wow.
yeah, so I stayed with them, and I guess that's like the very condensed version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, you didn't really have a mother figure, father figure, anything, any sort of safety in that parent world. You had your grandparents, which from what I understand, they are very special to you. Is that correct?
Yeah. They were very special to me. I just recently lost so when I say mom and dad, like I'm referencing my grandparents, just I was with them for so long that it just was like a natural transition to call them that. But I lost my dad in September, so that's been a big adjustment to not have him anymore. But
That
yeah,
is a big adjustment.
yeah, so it was a very unique relationship growing up. It was as special as they were to me, like it still wasn't easy to be raised by like that different generation. Um and especially my grandfather was in the military, so it was like very strict, lots of rules. Definitely far more rules than my friends had, so it was a challenge that way. Like time, I still remember some of my friends, like some of their memories of me in like high school was that I had timed phone calls. So like if I was talking to my friends, I had like a set amount of time. So I guess similar to, I guess, setting screen time for our kids now, I had phone call time. So that's something my friends still kind of tease me about. But
That's cute. Is that where you got your love of hockey from?
yes, yeah. Saturdays, my dad and I, it was hockey in Canada. Like you didn't talk during coach's corner. You didn't talk unless it was a commercial. He bought me my first hockey cards, so I like had all my hockey cards organized in a binder by team and then alphabetically by player. And yeah, so it was definitely our thing. Very different teams that we cheered for. He was wrong in his choice, but
I love the competitive nature.
oh yeah.
Amazing. Okay, I figured it had to stem from something because you
Yeah.
and hockey are like two peas in a pod. That and
Yeah.
Eminem.
Yes.
Um, okay, so that is extraordinary. So, so you had really strong figures in that way. Your mom was not a very strong figure, it sounds like. Did you keep connection with her? I mean, if it's appropriate for me to pry.
Yeah, absolutely. We did keep connection until I was around 10 years old. And then it just started getting too inconsistent and too difficult for me. I would never know when those visits were going to happen. Like they were supposed to be certain days of the week at certain times. And I still remember like sitting on the front steps, like waiting for her to get off the bus. And then I'd be out there all day because I was so sure that she was going to visit that day and then she maybe just missed the bus. And so it was just like stuff like that kept happening. so, and it's funny because I look at my daughter. I've spoken about this before, but she is the same age I was when I chose to cut off contact, and I felt so old. And then I look at her and
Right.
I'm like, I can't imagine her having to make that decision that she didn't want to keep a relationship with me because it was too painful. Like I just can't imagine that for her. So,
Right.
mhm.
Right. You had to grow up really, really fast.
Yeah, and I think deep down, like, even though it was my decision, I think I always hoped that she would like want to fight for that and like find me or talk to me in that regard. So I think there was definitely like that mother wound there for me of like
Mhm.
feeling abandoned and not feeling chosen that kind of had a trickle effect into so many relationships in my life.
Right. Well, and that really leads me to my next questions is the trickle effect. Like where did that begin to show up for you? Like was it as early as high school that it started to like this wound of like you say the mother wound of not having someone who you can rely on, or was that, later on in life?
I think it was like I was definitely always there. I just wasn't aware of it until after my first divorce when I started counseling. That's really where that eye opener came where it's like, okay, why did I choose this? Like, why did I choose this person? How did I get here? How am I a single mom? And so my counselor, we just like went right back to day one, like my earliest memory, and just went from there. So yeah, that's really when I started being aware, and all of the former pieces. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like why didn't I start counseling like 10 years ago? Like this would have saved me so much. But I guess you have to follow that process and that journey and get there in your own time.
Yeah, and doesn't it speak to the importance of counseling and how, we all think that we need to wait until we're at the bottom of the barrel. But had you gone back 10 years, you would have maybe never entered into that, first marriage or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that would have been really eye-opening for you, I think. Going from, just feeling like, no, I don't have a wound here, I'm good, and then realizing it's all there. Did it kind of come crashing in, or was it something that you were prepared for?
I was not prepared because I was not expecting to talk about my childhood in that counseling session. I thought it was just going to be like talking forward, like talking about being there for my kids and navigating separation and co-parenting and all of that. So I was I was not prepared to like step back in the time machine. But it was so important that I did because I just did not realize how much those early patterns and like the people pleasing and the abandonment wound, like how much that carries forward and how long you hold on to it. And I don't know that it'll ever go away for me, but now I have that awareness where it's like, okay, I know I'm reacting this way because of this. This isn't something this other person has done. Like this is me. I need to go meditate. I need to go to a hockey game. I need to do something for me and just like reset.
Wow. That is huge awareness.
Mhm.
Okay, so I know that you work in the Little Wonders program, or you've created the Little Wonders program, which I want to hear about. Um, is was the birth of that because of everything that you had gone through?
It was, I just didn't know it for over
Got
a
you.
year. I think it would have been because I started it January of 2021, and then the first gala would have been October of 2022. So it was over a year before I put the pieces together. And then right before the first gala, I kind of had this moment where I was like, oh, that's why I started this. So um, when I started it, I had seen a mom post that she didn't know where she fit in because she had a child newly diagnosed and all the people in her life wanted to be there for her, but it just wasn't the same. Like no one was speaking the right language to her to like make her feel seen. And so I was like, right away, that just triggered something in me. And I was just like, no, like, you're not going to feel alone. You are going to have a place, and I'll create that place for you. And I didn't really see in the moment that it was because I never felt like I had that place where I fit in. Like, I was raised by my grandparents and I didn't know my birth father, and like just all these different things where I felt so different that I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to like shrink down and be smaller and fade into the background so that all of those differences weren't on the spotlight. And I think a lot of the moms in my program have mentioned that too, where it's like you have this like mixture where you want people to see you because you want to feel seen, but then also if people aren't seeing you, you just want to shrink as small as possible. So
Right. Isn't that the truth? And well, and for the I'm just going to digress for a moment. With the Little Wonders program, for the listeners who don't know, Little Wonders program is a program that you created for women who have not women, but maybe families. Am I correct? That have little wonders. So children with any sort of disability or difficulty in life, so that they can come and have community. Am I correct there?
yep,
Okay,
yeah,
amazing. So, okay, so with that community, so you are cultivating a community that you never had,
right.
truly, which is just so beautiful when you think about it. Because, as much as as much as we maybe don't deal with some of the things that we need to deal with as soon as we maybe could deal with them, um, which is just human nature, by the way. You, without even knowing it, were already turning it into power. You were already taking your experience and utilizing it for good, not evil. And
Yeah,
that's really quite
it was
beautiful.
kind of funny too, like how when I realized that it was like every family that I'm working with is also healing me as well, then I immediately felt guilty. Like that first year where I didn't realize that it was also helping me, I was like, okay, I just want to help all these other people. And then as soon as I realized that it was like partially healing me, then I had a period where I felt guilty. And I had to say to my counselor, I'm like, what is this? Like, why is it that if it's like this like mutual healing that it's like I didn't want any of it. I didn't want any of that like attention or any of that. So it's just very interesting.
That is interesting. And really not uncommon either. This idea that we give and give and give, to our detriment, means that we're good people. And if we receive in any capacity, we aren't.
Yeah. Or you have
Is
to give something in order to receive. That's also something I'm working on with my like a spiritual coach is she is like, you don't have to give all of yourself to deserve receiving. You just have to be open to receive. And as soon as she said that, I was like, wow, okay. That's
yeah,
a very different way than I've ever thought about it before. So
novel idea. Yeah,
yeah.
and a powerful one at that.
Mhm.
Extraordinary. Okay, and so I know that you've had so many transitions as well as time's gone by. So the Little Wonders program is still very much alive.
Mhm.
Um, but you have created a community, especially in Saskatoon anyway, that and now it's outstretching. Like now there's Calgary and all these other places. But you've started to create community beyond just Little Wonders. Like you've started to create empowerment communities among hundreds of women, where they come together and they have subject matter where they begin to feel seen,
Yeah.
is really what, from my seat anyway, what I see of you, which is why, like, I've always obsessively messaged you and been like, I don't know how you're doing this, but you're changing the world, and I'm so
Yeah.
impressed. um, and so I guess what I'm wondering is, as the Little Wonders program evolved, and you moved into this more the female empowerment space as well, what was the excitement behind that? What was the driving force behind that?
It was so gradual. I didn't even really almost see it happening, if that makes sense. Like it was just like, okay, I'm going to try this event. And then I would get someone where it was like they had such an emotional response to it. And I was like, okay, I want to keep doing this. I want to keep. And I just, so it was like, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to go a little bit bigger and I'm going to try it now. I'm going to try this event a little bit bigger. And just, yeah, it was just that feeling I got and the feedback that people were saying. It was like, it's nice to come out and to be seen and it's not scary to be seen. And I'll never forget a woman saying that to me because it was like growing up, it was scary to be seen. Like someone paying attention to you wasn't always safe for me. Like if I was invisible, I wasn't in trouble. I wasn't in danger. I wasn't getting bullied. So to have women say that these events, like have them feeling safe to be seen, I was like, I want to do this all the time. Like I want to do this for as many women as I can.
Yeah. Well, and you certainly do. I remember the first gala that you had, that you stood up on stage and told your story. And I remember you saying you were really scared because of being seen. How do you find that now? Because you are very seen. Everyone knows who you are.
It depends on the day. Like as long as I am taking care of my mental health and doing the things that I need to do with my capacity and honoring my boundaries, I'm good. If I get to a point where I say yes to too much, or I'm not sleeping properly, or I'm skipping workouts, or just doing the things that are just, to me, it's like back to the basics. It's really easy for me to like have that anxiety spiral where it's like, oh, okay, I want to delete social media. I don't want a business. Like I don't want this. So for me, it's really important for me to take care of my mental health because it's so hand in hand with being able to like put myself out there to help other people.
Right. One question that I really have that I'm so curious about is from the depths of someone who had a deep fear of being seen to the person who, made a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit broader. Where did you find the bravery to step into this?
I think a lot of it was just the community that started growing around me. Just that
Mm.
power of, it's like, I'll do this, and whether it fails or not, I know I've got at least one person who is going to be there to help me if I need to. I almost said pick up the phone. We know I don't pick up the phone to call anybody. I don't talk. I don't use my phone for that. But there's always someone there if I needed it. So it was just, as I kept trying, and some were successful and some were failures, but just knowing that that community was building around me, so that it didn't matter if what I was trying failed or succeeded. There was people rooting me on and cheering for me. I think that was a really big part of it.
So truly in the spirit of serving, um, you found your success in that route. You hear a lot of times about people who imposter syndrome and all these things. And what's so interesting about that is that it's and I mean, I don't mean selfish, because I don't think selfish is a bad word. I actually think it's a very positive word, but it's very self-focused when you feel like an imposter. Whereas for you, you may have felt like an imposter. I think you've said that to me
Yeah.
before. There was times where you truly felt like you were an imposter. Um, but also you turned that on its head and you were like, okay, imposter or no, there's a community who I have to serve.
Yeah.
And that was really a driving force for bravery for you.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's
and there was
really
even one
powerful.
event where I remember I was like, I need to cancel this. Like, no one is coming. And I had put out a notice that I was possibly rebooking, and it was just one woman, but she was like, I need this. And I was like, you know what? I don't care if this event loses thousands of dollars. Just the fact that someone was brave enough to reach out and say, I really need this event. I was like, I'm just gonna do it. And then it ended up selling, and it was okay. Saskatoon can be very last minute for ticket sales. So I was worried for nothing, but just the fact that she was brave enough to do that, it's like things like that just really give you that driving force, that it's like, if only one person comes to this event and I sit and I have a glass of wine or coffee with her, and that was what she needed, then let's do it.
And you did it.
Yeah.
Amazing. That is really beautiful. And I think such a good lesson for everyone listening that you can truly take your experiences and your fears, because they were so present in you, and say, okay, well, I'm going to feel the fear and do it anyway, but from the space of, who am I to continue to be small? If I do that, people will suffer because I have this ability to help. You
Yeah.
know, I think that that's just such a cool and really, really humble way of moving forward and, really becoming iconic as you've done.
Well, and I
So I'm
actually
getting really sidetracked on my questions.
Oh,
So I'll
no,
come
that's
back to those.
okay. No, I was gonna say, like, initially, like, I was like, I'm gonna work with kids. I wanna help kids, whether it's, like, through the family program or kids events. I didn't necessarily think about doing a lot of these bigger women's events when I first started event planning, because, like, I'll be totally honest, growing up, like, those were my bullies, was other women and other girls. So it was like, it just didn't cross my mind, and now I can't imagine not doing things with a community of women. Like, it's been such a nice transition and shift to kind of do switch to that like uplifting side of things.
Yeah. And you still do both, right? Like I
Mhm.
feel like
Yeah.
you still do the children's parties and all the things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. So you're helping the girls to become strong women, and you're helping the women who are ready to be retaught to reteach themselves in adulthood.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big deal. Um so what were some effective tools that you utilized as you were going through these transitions in life? Because, I know that often my listeners are people who have gone through some type of adversity and experience,
Mhm.
and you have certainly gone through one. So, what is something that you utilize to kind of be this tool that you kind of keep coming back to? For some people, that's God. For some people, that's, maybe a mantra or a saying. What is it that you have utilized to get you through all of these transitions?
Like
Could be hockey.
dark humor. I
There
mean,
you
and
go.
I'm joking, but I really do. Like, I actually like there are times where I'm just like, I have to throw out that joke about it because if it can't be funny sometimes, then it can be very consuming. So I do very much use humor to get through harder times. And yeah, like the Oilers definitely, like when you say hockey, like it's very true. Like that team, there was times where it was like I didn't know what the next day was going to bring, and it was really hard, but knowing, like, focusing on, like, how are they doing, how are their stats, what are the playoff chances, like, sounds kind of silly saying it, but yeah, that team did pull me through some, like, really really dark times. So now I schedule my entire life around their schedule. But um and then yeah, counseling was huge. I cannot say enough good things about counseling. um, and on the spiritual side of things for me, like, I do Reiki on a regular basis. I have a couple ladies that I go see, so I really like that, and they are really big with helping teach like mindfulness and being able to quiet my mind somewhat so I can meditate. And um, I started doing a gratitude journal last year, so every night I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And some nights it is not easy. Like some nights it's as simple as I'm grateful that I'm sitting in a warm bed right now to write in this journal because the day was just crappy, and that's what I need to focus on. So just that like mentality of like not every day is a good day because I can't do toxic positivity, but there is something good at least in every single day. So
Isn't that the truth?
mhm.
And I love that. And I would echo that. That, no toxic positivity, this spiritual bypass that so many people are so conditioned to do now.
Mhm.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just learning lessons. Like,
Yeah.
no, maybe this just really freaking sucks, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and I mean,
Um,
even looking back at some of the things that happened to me as a child, I'm like, I don't look back and think that this was like to make me stronger. Like my trauma did not make me stronger. I made me stronger in spite of like the trauma. So I was like, I'm not
damn
giving
right.
trauma that power.
Yes. Yes. Love that. Love that. Yes. Your trauma didn't make you stronger. It traumatized you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it did.
I love that. I'm a big fan of that one. Extraordinary. Cool, cool. Okay, so I want to wrap up with a few questions. One of them was, what advice would you give your younger self, who, maybe somewhere in the timeline where you felt lost or like you could have used some advice from an older adult? What is something that you would have told yourself in that place?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I did just post a reel not that long ago where I like wrote a letter to my inner child. And like it's like just looking back, it's like you're allowed to be a child. It's okay to not carry that adult and parental load. Like it's okay to trust someone and laugh, and it will get better, and you can do this, and you are strong, and you don't have to be invisible. So it's just like going against everything I think I was ever afraid of as a child. I would just sit down and be like, you don't have to be afraid of this.
Wow. That's a really, really, really powerful and a very caring, motherly way of speaking to the inner child.
Well, and I
I
think
love that.
one of the biggest things for me is it's like as a parent, I loved that quote. It's like be who you needed when you were younger. And I try and
Mm,
remind myself that because especially with my middle child, her and I are so similar, but our anxieties are very different. Like I need to step away by myself for 5 minutes and take a breath and like reset so I'm not in that state of like dysfunction and dysregulation. And she has like the separation anxiety. So it's like she wants to be with me while I'm trying to do that. So yeah, it's there's lots of conversations about boundaries and space and honoring capacity with my kids.
right, right. Amazing. Well, and I'm sure that the boundaries that you put up are teaching them as well, um, maybe perhaps how to be clear about what they want in life.
Yeah.
I think that we learn from our parents how to conduct ourselves. If our parents are over givers and um never set any boundaries or always, kids, never themselves. I think that the kids learn in the future, especially as a parent, but like even just in life, that it means that it's everyone else, and never themselves.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
with my kids too, they question everything, which some days is so frustrating. But I'm also very grateful that they're comfortable enough to question and they're not just listening to what I say because I'm the grown up in the house. Whereas, like, that's kind of like how I grew up. Like I said, in that military background, it's like you just did what you were told. Like, that's just, you didn't ask questions, you didn't even think about it. And my children question everything. So
Yeah.
it's a blessing and a curse, but I'm really trying to break those cycles where they feel comfortable asking tough questions and having big feelings because I'm a safe space for them.
How does that feel, because you are a cycle breaker? How does that feel to hear that? Like, that?
To be honest, sometimes it feels really heavy. Like I know it's a
Okay.
good thing, but
Yeah.
I've talked to a couple girlfriends about this who had childhood trauma, and it's like we're so grateful that we're doing it, but it is such a big load to carry sometimes. And the big thing that I tell my kids is like sometimes we'll sit down after we've had an argument or whatever, and I'm like, you guys, no one taught me how to do this part of parenting. Like I don't know how to have this conversation. So like I'll apologize when I need to apologize, or I'm like, you guys, it's not your job to parent me, but sometimes I might need grace because again, like this is a situation where I was never taught how to have these big conversations. It was just things were the way they were, and yeah, so lots of big conversations. So it's nice to know that I'm breaking cycles, but some days it's very heavy work to do.
A lot to do. Yeah, and a lot of responsibility to take on when, like you say, you don't necessarily have the tools to commission it. Well, I just really want to honor you for the work that you've done. Because if in stark contrast to, say, your mother, I just think about like how different you are. Like you may not feel like you have the tools every day, and that's fine. But the way that it's been described to me anyway, when I've heard stories about your mother, you broke cycles eons ago, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and so, truly just done is what I want to say.
And it's been really good too, because like those conversations, like I'll be very honest with the kids about like my childhood, but it opens conversations for us too about privilege as well. Because I've told
Hmm.
them, I was like, you guys, like this is my story and this is our journey, but like we also have the privilege that comes with this. And so it's opened bigger conversations about inclusion and diversity and like Canada's history and all of these things. So it's yeah, like it's there's a lot of good that comes from like these bigger conversations with the kids for sure.
Absolutely. Even listening, I'm like, man, how amazing would that have been if my mom leveled with me once in a while, Like that's so big, It was always just, yeah, like mom is this like perfect parent who's like making all these mistakes. I can't imagine what that would have been like if my parent had said to me like, "Hey, I need some grace. Like I don't totally know how to do this." Or the privilege piece, like all of it. So again, another really refreshing addition. I love that. Okay, so my final question that I have for you is, what is the most powerful lesson that your experiences taught you, if you were to sum it up?
um, I think the first thing that comes to mind is like, actually, you can. That's one of the tattoos that I wanted to get. So it was like I lived my life always telling myself the things that I couldn't or shouldn't do. And it's like, actually, you can. Like I've done so many of those things that I grew up telling myself I couldn't. So I think that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Amazing. Very powerful and a great way to end. I'm sure that anybody listening is feeling that really deeply, because actually you can is it can be a really, really scary thing to realize. So great work. Thanks so much for coming on, Jen, and for sharing your story. I know that a lot of people are going to get a lot from this episode.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.